And when you put this together, when you have vulnerable people and then people with big egos, and you put them together in a room, you have a dangerous combination. Hello, my loves. Welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you are new here. My name is Lorena. I am a self-concept coach, and I support women to shift their self-concept, shift their identity so that they can align with what they truly desire and manifest it into their lives. My approach to manifestation is very holistic and emotionally integrated and very embodied. And if you want to learn more about this, I invite you to check out the links in the description box below, because there's a bunch of free resources for you, like a guidebook and a few masterclasses for you to tune into and get started on your journey. If you like this video and you like this type of content in general, I would love it if you left a little like. Leave me a comment as well. Let me know about your thoughts. I always love reading your comments and engaging with you. And if you want to come back and you want to stick around, then don't forget to subscribe. I upload videos every week, sometimes more than once a week, and I would love to have you here as part of this community. So today we're actually talking about a very important but kind of serious topic. We're going to do a bit of a deep dive into spiritual bypassing and even spiritual narcissism, cults, groupthink, all these things specifically in the law of assumption and manifestation community. And I already do have a few videos where I speak about approaches, methods, and beliefs in the manifestation community that just don't sit right with me and that I believe harm people more than they serve them. I also have a video that speaks about problems or issues that I see with the law of assumption in particular, and that whole community and that whole world. But today we're getting a bit more serious, and we're actually talking about the more dangerous sides of this world, of this community, and how it can really go wrong and impact you very negatively. It's important to be educated about these things, to make decisions from a place of awareness of what you're consuming, what you're getting into, so that you can really trust yourself and trust your own intuition as to what speaks to you, what doesn't speak to you, what is maybe too good to be true. I want to start by explaining the nature of spirituality and mysticism itself, and then I want to share a little bit about my own journey of coming into this world and into this community. And that is why I'm so passionate about this topic, because yeah, I'm a coach myself, right? So because of that, it's very important for me to be in integrity, and it's very important for me to have everyone who comes into my world be clear on whether they want to be here, whether they align with what I teach, what my message is, or whether they don't feel good being here. I want people to feel safe, and I want people to feel like they are empowered, and there's a lot of pedestaling that is going on in the community, sadly. I'm also passionate about it because I have had my fair share of experiences myself when I initially started my journey, where I got sucked into groupthink and almost like a culty energy. So I understand how easily that can happen as well. But let's begin with the nature of spirituality. We don't really know how it all works. Be very careful with anyone who tells you they have all the answers, or they can give you enlightenment, or they have dissolved their ego, because it's most likely not true. The nature of spirituality and mysticism is just about this knowing and this feeling that we know when we feel that there's something bigger and more powerful than ourselves. There's whatever you want to call it, a god, a higher power. There's something mystical, something that you cannot explain. It's just this awareness that things aren't random and there must be something bigger at play. So maybe that's because you've seen meaningful coincidences, you've experienced synchronicities. Maybe it's because you have felt your intuition to be very strong, almost psychic, because you could tell things would happen before they happened, or you had an inkling that proved to be correct. Maybe you have realized the power of your own consciousness and you have observed and experienced how your reality projects itself through your own state and your own consciousness. Maybe you've had soul connections with people that were so strong that you kind of knew this kind of been your first rodeo together. You just know that this physical world isn't all there is. But you and I, we are still looking at this, all of this, even spirituality, mysticism, through a very human lens, because we are in human bodies. We will always have our egos because we are human. And even when you've had very profound mystical experiences that I have had too, you can never have the full picture or all the answers. Now, let me tell you a little story. My spiritual journey started somewhere completely different. I started out more with Buddhist principles and the Buddhist philosophy. And the way I dove into manifestation way after this was actually through a friend who had told me about it. And I was kind of intrigued. I was like, I can manifest, create my reality. That sounds kind of strange, but I was very intrigued. So I got into it and I read about it and I devoured all the spiritual texts I could find about it. And I got really obsessed, like I know many of you probably have as well. And this was way before I started reading about it on the internet. I started with spiritual texts, I started applying them, and I started seeing some changes. So that was pretty awesome. Now, when I went online, and this was like, now there's so many coaches in this space and there's so much information and so many messages. And this wasn't the case when I went online. There was a community, but it was a very small community. It was a very tight-knit community. And it was kind of wild because the one thing that became very apparent to me very quickly is that everyone kind of thought they knew better than the other. Everyone wanted to fit in and belong to the group, and nobody wanted to shake things up by voicing a different opinion. And if they did, they were often almost shunned. There was a lot of black and white thinking, a lot of bypassing, and I felt the pressure myself. I sometimes caught myself thinking, oh, I can't post something like this. I can't say it like that because I'm gonna get backlash and people are gonna think that I'm not living in the end. So I can't speak about how I'm feeling or where I'm questioning these beliefs or principles. A spiritual path for many people is a path of healing. A lot of people come into this through painful experiences, traumatic experiences. A lot of people come into this not just out of curiosity, but because something doesn't feel right or isn't working. Often it is initiated through desperation or through pain. So because of that, for many people, they come in with a vulnerability and a readiness to come back to their truest, most authentic essence. And it also attracts a lot of egos, and it attracts a lot of people with, dare I say it, more narcissistic tendencies. And when you put this together, when you have vulnerable people and then people with big egos, and you put them together in a room, you have a dangerous combination. And obviously not everybody falls into these two categories. But what I'm saying is that spirituality or the spiritual community is very conducive and it's very easy to get sucked into this. So let's talk narcissism. Let's talk spiritual narcissism. So to understand what spiritual narcissism is, you kind of need to understand what narcissism as a whole is. And mostly when you use the word narcissism, what's referred to is narcissistic personality disorder, which is a mental health condition. With that condition, people have an inflated sense of self, an inflated ego. They have no empathy. They see themselves and their needs as more important than anybody else's. Now, when I talk about spiritual narcissism, I'm not necessarily talking about narcissistic personality disorder, although that can be the case. But I also mean just narcissistic tendencies, which, to be honest, we can all have. Everybody can have them from time to time. But yeah, it could also be somebody with an actual personality disorder. But I just want to make a little disclaimer here. I'm not a therapist, and I'm also not here to diagnose anybody. But that is what narcissism as a whole is. Now, to understand spiritual narcissism, we need to first understand our ego, because our ego always wants to reinforce that we are different from everybody else around us. We stand out. We are special. And our ego can do that through putting us down, minimizing our worth and our abilities, but it can also do that through inflating our ego, through inflating our sense of self and making us believe that we're better or more important than other people. And when you're on a spiritual path, the ego will cling on to that too, just like anything else. So the ego often wants to achieve a sense of being spiritually superior, let's call it that way. So with that in mind, spiritual narcissism, or what I define it as, is when on a spiritual path, the person genuinely starts believing that their level of awakening, enlightenment, spiritual development is higher than anybody else's. That they are somehow special or holy or more advanced because they've had a Kundalini awakening or because they had some mystical experience or some spiritual insight. And sometimes that may be intentionally manipulative, and that is the biggest danger here. But other times it might also be entirely unconscious. And when it comes to spiritual ego, in a way, everybody kind of falls into this trap at some point on their spiritual path because it's normal. It's a normal reaction of the ego. But it can truly turn into a big problem, not only if the person gets stuck in this spiritual ego because they haven't integrated their ego, but more so when they position themselves into a place of authority. So they might start a movement or a community, or they might start guiding, teaching, or coaching people when they are not trained to do so. And they haven't integrated their own ego, so they can't really keep themselves in check. And then, of course, you also have spiritual bypassing, which I did speak about in several videos before, but there you can have people who blame everything on other people's ego, but it's never their own. I actually had a friend say to me very recently that they wanted to speak to another friend also in the spiritual world about a boundary that they had to set. And they were nervous to do that because they knew or fully expected that that friend would deflect to them and would say something like, well, that's just your ego talking, or that's just your shadow coming up. And yeah, maybe, but that's not always the case. And spirituality in particular attracts big egos and narcissists and narcissistic traits, first of all, because it attracts wounded people, but also because it allows for gaslighting, which is exactly what I was seeing a lot when I first came online in the spiritual community, and I almost got sucked into it as well. There was a lot of bypassing, a lot of invalidating emotions, a lot of this is the only truth. As many of you who have been to my channel before will know that I studied Neville Goddard's work very extensively for many years. And the community around Neville Goddard was incredibly toxic when I came online because he was almost seen as some type of guru or god or the person who had the ultimate truth. And that is easy to happen. And because some of my content is inspired by his work, although I'm really not in that world much anymore, I still sometimes get comments from people who are like, but Neville said this. And I'm like, cool. But all of this, what I just described, this black and white thinking, this community making it easy for both vulnerable people and people with narcissistic tendencies to enter and to take up space, especially now that we're all online and everything is so global and everybody can share their message and their thoughts and their beliefs. All of this is a perfect recipe for cults, for groupthink, and even for abuse. This can traumatize people. This can traumatize people. It can make people actually want to stay away from spirituality because it can harm them. It also leads to trauma from coaching. And I have to say, I am someone, I fully stay in my own world. I have no idea what any other coach who does something remotely similar to what I do is doing, is saying. I just see it in titles sometimes. I just see what people tell me sometimes. I don't consume content from other people. So I only realized recently when I had a discovery call with a client, well, now client, at the time wasn't a client, I realized how bad this was, because something I always do when people apply to work with me is I ask them about their previous coaching experience, because some people have zero, for some people this is the first time they accept help. Other people have done lots of courses and programs and had lots of coaching before. Some people have had very good experiences with coaching and really changed their lives through it. Other people have really bad experiences. The conversation I had with this particular woman really stood out to me because the stories she told me about the experiences that she had with coaches was honestly heartbreaking. So for those of you who don't know, the coaching industry is not regulated. And I spoke about this on Instagram recently after I had this call with her. Anybody can wake up tomorrow and say, I'm a coach now, and start a business. In a way, that's great that it's not regulated and that everybody has a voice, because it enables people to help others that otherwise maybe wouldn't be able to. But it's also really bad in more ways than it's good, because it means that people who are untrained, people who don't have their clients' best interests at heart, who just want to inflate their own ego or make a lot of money. And by the way, nothing against making money. I also want to make a lot of money, but I want to do it with integrity. Or that people who just don't really know what they're doing, who are just regurgitating information that they find online or that they read in a book, that they can also say, I'm a coach. And how do you know who to trust? And sometimes this is completely innocent. Sometimes this can just be a waste of money for people who then invest in a coach and then they don't get the result or the care that they were hoping for, because the coach doesn't actually have the capability to serve them. But other times this can be really dangerous, because it can traumatize people, because it can lead them to repress their emotions and to bypass what is truly happening within them or within their life. It can lead to mental health issues. And I hear this a lot from people who come to me and who say, when I started my manifestation journey, I was mentally and emotionally in a better place than I am now because of all the messages that I've received. And I so often hear of people who pay for coaching and then all they're being told on a call is to shift their state or imagine differently or to say these affirmations. And that's not coaching. I thought about this question a lot. Is there even a place for teachers, gurus, mentors, and coaches? We all know best what's best for us. We are our own gurus. So is there a place for it? And obviously, I'm a coach myself. I coach people myself. I do believe there's a place for it. And I sat with that a lot over the years, because here's the thing. I think we all need a guide. Because as I said, everybody can fall into the trap of spiritual ego, and we all usually do. And I have 1000% been there, and now I can usually catch it, but I also have not been without a mentor or a coach for quite a long time, because it keeps my ego in check and it helps me advance. And I am also such an eternal student. I actually just invested in a new practitioner training, and it's really important for me to keep learning and to keep investing in myself, both personally and professionally, to become the best version of myself and to become the best coach that I can be, to serve my clients in the best way possible. And we are all eternal students. We all need people to learn from. We all need help. We all need to ask for support. We deserve to get that support and guidance and to not have to do it all on our own. And it is also really, really important to be discerning and to learn from and be guided and mentored and coached by people who are in integrity, who are trained, who know what they are doing, who are a safe space for you, who feel safe and who are safe. And there is a lot of bad stuff out there, because this industry and this community really attracts a lot of egos just by its very nature, and it attracts a lot of traumatized and vulnerable people. And integrity is just one of my very highest values, which is why I keep learning. It's also why I have such a grounded approach to manifestation. You will not hear me say be delusional or just imagine differently or just shift your state. You will not hear me bypass things. And I don't want to create the illusion that this journey is easy, because it's not. Changing your self-concept, shifting your identity, transforming who you are being, peeling off all the layers, that's really hard, especially if you want it to truly change you and your life and your perception. And you also want to sustain that change, right? So that's why I personally always try to strike the balance between, you know, the spiritual, the mystical, but then also just the reality of life. I don't want you to be in my space if you don't want to be, if you don't feel good here, if you don't feel like you're getting something out of this, if you feel like you have to betray or abandon yourself. If you just want a bit of inspiration and validation and you want to hear that it's always easy and you can just shift your state and then you're done, or you just need to visualize something different, then you're not at the right address here. I really want to give the power back to you. I want you to trust yourself and your intuition. I want you to not be too proud to ask for support because you deserve guidance. It accelerates the process so much and it keeps our egos in check, because I promise you, the ego will find all of the loopholes in the mind it can to just inflate itself. It finds new mind games the moment you have transcended one thing. But when you are asking for that support, you should feel good with whatever you are investing your time, energy, and money in. And you should feel like you're at the right address with a mentor or coach or therapist that you are asking or hiring. I am actually going to put a book recommendation in the description box below, which is a really, really good book. It's called Eyes Wide Open, and it's a really good book about being discerning on the spiritual path and being careful not to fall into the trap of groupthink and cults and putting teachers and gurus on a pedestal. So with this video, I want to see action in the comments. Please let me know what your thoughts and experiences are. I'm sure you all have a lot to say and share about this topic, because I know there are many people who have experienced bad things and good things in this community. So let me know. The comments are open. And I look forward to seeing you in next week's video.